to me is a little too linear. It's not holistic enough. It's not coming enough from the top down in terms of business strategy overall, because not all leads are equal. And frankly, if you're going to compete as a business on price, if your goal is to be the price leader in your market, then maybe that is what you should be thinking about. Maybe you should be thinking about what is the lowest cost that I can generate cold leads on a pay-per-click basis from, it doesn't matter where they come from. I've got the best price. I've got really good messaging around that, and I can close these at this percentage, and it's a calculus. Here's my client lifetime value. Here's my client acquisition cost that I can stomach. And by the way, I think that when somebody says, well, what should my marketing budget be? Theoretically, it should be unlimited. If you know what your lifetime value of the client is and your client acquisition cost is, and then let's back it up one more. You need to also know what your margin is, your gross margin by month, by property managed. Why? Because you need to understand how many months it's going to take you to recoup your client acquisition cost.
Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Klein, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it.
Hi, this is Mark and Tony. Thanks for joining us again. We are back, and we are talking today about lead gen. And
so
go ahead.
I've had several conversations lately, people wanting to grow, trying to figure out how to expand their business. And, you know, in property management, there's so many different areas you got to be good at. You've got to be an expert at marketing, sales, being a therapist at times, accounting, maintenance, all of these things. And so there's different areas that you need to be good at. And depending on how big your team is, that's going to determine who needs to be good at what. But one of the areas that I hear a lot is, how do we grow? How can I grow my business? And there's really, I like to kind of look at it as there's two ways to grow your business. You can be a hunter or you can be a fisher. And a hunter goes out and hunts, looks for outbound leads, goes out and tries to create relationships and generate business. And then a fisher is somebody that just puts a lot of hooks in the water. So maybe they're using SEO, they're using social media, whatever, and they're waiting for somebody to bite on that so that they can reel them in. And I'm not saying that your business should be set up on one or the other. I think you need both. But I see a lot of people say they want to grow, but they don't actually have an active outreach campaign where they're trying to develop leads by going out and attracting folks.
Yeah. And I have a couple of thoughts. If I could kick off with just the mindset around lead gen. For me, there's a couple things that touch on lead gen, which is, are we being intentional about the type of clients we want, the way we want to grow our business? Are we thinking long-term or short-term? I think some of the mistakes or the misses, again, just kind of going back to, I have this theme in business that I keep going back to, which is short-term versus long-term. Short-term, if I'm thinking short-term, I might think, I need more leads. I need as many leads as I can get at the lowest cost per lead because I know I'll close a certain percentage of them. And I don't care where they come from. The longer term might be, I want to create the most incredible service experience I possibly can, which will, over time, create more referral leads. And that'll be my primary strategy, because those referral leads not only convert at a much higher rate, I don't have to spend money to get those leads necessarily, and those are the most likely clients to be the most supportive and highest profit margin. And so like when I think about lead gen, I like that. For some reason, my brain goes immediately to short-term versus long-term. And I agree that we need to have multiple lines in the water. Another idea that comes to mind is, lead marketing in general and lead gen is so fluid. It's a constant iteration. It's a constant experiment. And in order to know what's working, we have to have measurements around it. So some of these ideas maybe we can unpack in our discussion. But those are the two things my head goes to immediately. It's a constant evolution experiment. We should have multiple lines in the water. But, are we thinking short term or are we thinking long term when we're talking about lead gen?
So I like the conversation about the long term and what it means to create long term business and having those referrals. What are you not doing when you're thinking about short term that you're doing if you're thinking about long term?
Yeah, well, I think short term, sometimes being very short-sighted about lead gen, just to kind of explore that idea a little bit more and give more color to that is if I sort of naively or just kind of, in an ADD manner, just think like, well, my problem is leads. I want to grow, I want to make more money. And so my problem is leads because if I had more leads, I can draw a straight line from lead and cost per lead to my conversion rate. Maybe that's a problem, but I'll deal with that separately to okay, and I've got more clients in the door. Um, that to me is a little too linear. It's not holistic enough. It's not coming enough from the top down in terms of business strategy overall, because not all leads are equal. And
Right.
and frankly, if you're going to compete as a business on price, like if your goal is to be the price leader in your market, then maybe that is what you should be thinking about. Maybe you should be thinking about what is the lowest cost that I can generate cold leads on a pay-per-click basis from at any random, no, it doesn't matter where they come from. And I've got the best price. I've got really good messaging around that, and I can close these at this percentage, and it's a calculus. Here's my and maybe we should go into this too, Tony. Here's my client lifetime value. Back it up one, so here's my client acquisition cost that I can stomach. And by the way, I think that when somebody says, well, what should my marketing budget be? Theoretically, it should be unlimited. If you
Right.
know what your lifetime value of the client is and your client acquisition cost is, and then let's back it up one more. You need to also know what your margin is, your gross margin by month, by property managed. Why? Because you need to understand how many months it's going to take you to recoup your client acquisition cost. So client lifetime value, client acquisition cost, um, gross margin by property by month. Now we can put the calculus together about, well, what can I spend on marketing to make it worthwhile at the margin, because everything in business is at the margin, right? And then um, I just got a notification on my computer screen. I forgot where I was going with that. But those three buckets, and then how quickly am I going to? Oh, and then you'll know if I'm going to, then you'll know, okay, how much money do I either need to have right now, capital, or that I need to borrow investment into marketing? Because think of your business like a machine, and you're putting, $100 bills in this side, and it should be kicking out $200 bills on the other side. However, there's a delay. How long is that delay? Is it 8 months, 9 months before you get the first 100 back? That's the idea behind understanding client acquisition cost and client lifetime value, and how long it takes to recoup that. You want to put a dollar bill, a $100 bill in. 9 months later, that $100 bill comes back out. And then more comes out over time, over the next 4 years, right? Or 5 years. And so how long am I going to put $100 bills in this side where the machine's like working on that? Because that 9 months where you're waiting for that money to come back, and the volume at which you want to grow, and multiply those two together, and that's the amount of cash it's going to take to power that marketing machine. So sorry if I'm getting too granular or getting too
No,
scattered.
I think that's great. One of the things that you hear people talk about, if they start to have that little bit deeper conversation, is what's your customer acquisition cost. But what they don't talk about is how soon do I get my money back? Because if I only have $1,000 to invest and I invest that $1,000 and I have to wait a year to get that money back, then I can only spend that money one time this year because it's gone and I don't get
Yeah.
it back. But if I could have $1,000 and I get my money back in a month, I can spend $12,000 over that year because I can keep
100%.
spending that same $1,000 over and over.
Exactly. Yeah, how
And
fast
so,
can you turn, how fast is your capital rolling over? If you want to grow at 10 units a month and your client acquisition cost is $1,000 per client, and it takes you a year to recoup that. But let's say it's a straight line recoupment. You're getting some of that back right away. So you're at the midpoint halfway through the year, right? uh, which is important to understand also because if I'm going to calculate the amount of capital needed to fuel that machine, that growth machine, then you could say I've got 10 a month. It's $1,000 a piece. That's 100. That's 10 grand I need for this month. But by the end of the year, I'm starting to get some of that money back. So you really take the midpoint. So you could say, well, that's $120,000 I need in my, of capital to make this marketing engine roll and keep rolling forward. But actually, it's only half of that. If you have a
mhm,
straight line recoupment of that client acquisition cost, you really only need to borrow or have at your disposal $60,000 of capital to fuel that engine.
right. And this is a tangent, so I'm just going to touch on it,
Yep.
throw a teaser out there, and then, but I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because we're talking about something else. But that's why it's so important when you're looking at your fee structure to figure out, can I charge some upfront fees? I hear people in the property management space that still don't charge a leasing fee, and they say, well, it's because it's not common in my marketplace. I, to me, that's an excuse. I'd rather get 10 clients that are going to work with my fee structure than try to get 50 that won't. And so for me, having those upfront fees, having a setup fee, having a new property onboarding fee, having a leasing fee, having a lease administration fee that you charge to the resident, like all of these different things, you don't have to charge all of them, but you need to look at how fast can I start to recoup my investment when I'm trying to go out and get new properties to manage.
There was the genius behind the renter's warehouse business model when it first came out. I don't know, 15 years ago. I don't know if it was in, they were nationwide. I just don't know what markets they are in. So people might not know this reference point. But the genius behind this business model was that they charged an upfront fee of 1 month's rent to place the tenant. And then they said, we'll give you a 12-month guarantee. We'll replace them at any time. And then they said, and to do monthly, management for you, we'll do that as well for you, 50 or 75 bucks. But a lot of people just wanted a tenant placed. And so they would 100% recoup their client acquisition costs and have some profit margin immediately. And that's one of the reasons why Renters Warehouse in the beginning grew so rapidly is because they had a surplus of capital right out of the gates. Alex Hormozy also talks about this idea. He talks about getting as much money up front as possible and attaching whatever guarantees you need to in order to sell the person on this is a premium product offering. There's nothing else like it. We've kind of talked about that, like building this category of one and really differentiating yourself and having that be part of your sales pitch, which was another video you and I recently did. But if you can do that effectively and show people why, hey, you're going to pay a premium up front, but here's some guarantees and protections you can't find anywhere else, and here's how that's so worth it, then you don't have to go out and have a huge war chest of capital to fuel your growth machine. And by the way, check in with yourself emotionally. If you're like most small business owners that are going to come heck or high water, you're going to bootstrap your business and you are not going to dip into a line of credit, you're not going to go out and raise capital, then this is increasingly important that you get as much money back as fast as possible in new business relationships.
Great points. Okay, so let's circle back around and let's talk about the short-term business thinking versus the long-term business thinking. And I'm reading a little bit into this. This wasn't your exact words, but you talked about cold leads versus warm leads. And the way I perceived that was you can build a formula to work on short-term business growth with the short-term thinking based on cold leads, based
Yep.
on I'm just going to advertise and do my SEO and I'm going to
Yes.
attract cold leads. And then I'm going to have to verify or not verify, but justify my service offering based on price because these people don't know me. They saw my ad or whatever. And there's no deeper relationship. There's
Yeah.
no
Lower quality
testimonial on
leads.
your behalf.
Those not only are lower quality leads in my experience, they are more price sensitive leads. They are shopping competitors extensively. They're more likely to view us as a service commodity business where it's harder to differentiate, and they're more transactionally minded.
Hmm.
So I think there's a lot of knocks against that cold lead outreach strategy that doesn't leverage any kind of goodwill, any kind of brand reputation, any kind of, high trust referral, relationships. These are brutal leads. I remember back in the day, people remember probably buying leads from allpropertymanagement.com, 10, 15 years ago when that was a viable strategy. Son of a gun, man. As soon as that lead came through, thank goodness for, Jordan Moyla and Lead Connector, now called Lead Simple, because that technology allowed us to connect with that lead immediately. And that was a lifesaver because that lead got sold to 4 other people at the exact same
Yeah.
moment. And you paid for it whether there was any contact with that person or not. And so that was my experience back in the day, and it was brutal. It's just a dogfight, absolute bloodbath. And if that's your primary strategy of growing your business, good luck. It is very tough, very difficult to grow that way. You want to, if you need to do that kind of stuff in the beginning, you want to be shifting away from that as soon as you can. Do the higher quality long-term stuff. I don't
So,
know.
so here's where I would maybe have either an additional input on that or maybe a slightly different opinion. I kind of look at that stuff as we talked about, or I talked about the difference between hunting and fishing.
Yes,
So I think still having your SEO, your blogs, your social media, your being out and creating authority in the marketplace, I think there's still a place for that because I think you can still grow your business with some of those cold leads, not necessarily by buying the leads, but I guess essentially if you're placing an ad, you're buying that lead, but without splitting hairs on that, I think there is a place to continue to plant seeds and to have hooks in the water. But
100%.
what you talked about was at some point we need to transition from I hope somebody bites my hook today to having a plan of I'm proactively building a team, whether I'm doing it myself or somebody's on my team. I'm proactively going out and building relationships for that attraction marketing where people are coming to me with a need. And I've already been sort of pre screened through a referral and I'm coming in as a warm lead or they're coming to me as a warm lead versus that cold lead status.
100%. Yeah, and my mind goes to like a realtor referral network on that. I don't know if you would call that hunting or fishing. To me, that's still kind of a hunting activity because I'm going out and I'm promoting myself directly with those
Mhm.
realtor referrals, but it's a channel that comes in with a lot more authority and a lot higher trust and a
Yeah.
lower propensity to shop, a lower propensity to just think about it like a transactional relationship.
So let's go down that path a little bit. You mentioned realtor referral program. I think there's actually multiple categories of a referral program, but let's stick with this one for a minute. So if you were to go down and work a realtor referral program, what does that look like for you? What does that actually mean? And people probably have an idea of kind of what that concept is, but let's break it down for them.
Yeah, so realtor referral is, it's going to the people that have the relationships already. You want to, in business in general, leverage the trust that already exists in other people's relationships. It's kind of like that, it's kind of related to that who not how concept, Dan Sullivan's book. It's, who are the people that already know my prospective clients and how do I leverage my exposure to them by tapping into one relationship where they might know a few hundred people, and that leverages my time instead of going out one by one.
Mhm.
One strategy tactic, if we can get into the weeds on tactics, that I'll just share right off the bat here is in the Arizona market in Phoenix, we were allowed to join our local realtor association, even though I'm a broker, a licensee, I was able to join as a vendor affiliate. And what that allowed me to do is pay to sponsor free continuing education classes. And, in the post-COVID world, this means that I can get on a Zoom call with 100 other people in attendance, and for $100, give a 2-minute commercial at the beginning of class. And that's fantastic exposure. So now I've got 100 times, like if each realtor knows, 2 or 300 people. So I'm impacting 100 times 300 for 2 minutes for $100. I will take that bet all day long. And what I would do is when I did them in person, I did some cold outreach to realtors, which was highly ineffective, except for the fact that I learned something really important. Most realtors told me, look, I only need a property manager referral like 2 to 3 times a year. So I thought, okay, duh, they're not going to remember me unless I do something that's sticky. So I would go to these classes and I would say, hey, if you, I know you're not going to remember me, or you might remember me, but you're not going to remember how to get in touch with me. So on the break, if you come up to me and show me that I'm in your phone as Mark first name, property manager last name, so that you'll remember, hey, this guy's in my phone. All I got to just type in property manager. Give me your business card, and I'll enter it into a drawing that we'll do at the end of class for a $100 gift card. And I would get in like 20 people's phones per session. And that
Love it.
became evergreen. You don't see the impact of that right away, but I've had people years later, hey, do you still do property management? I've got somebody, here's a scenario.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about the psychology of what an agent that refers you, what do they get out of it? Because if I'm an agent and somebody says they need a property manager and I hear that conversation, I'm having that conversation, what do I get out of referring Mark and Mark Rent? What do I get out of that? It seems like I'm having them take effort where the return seems kind of low. So what do I get psychologically, also maybe financially? What's that look like?
Yeah, I love this. I love the mindset here, Tony, because we should always be asking ourselves the question on the other side of this interaction we're having, what's in it for me? And so what do realtors want? Well, first of all, they want to sell homes. Primarily, they want to sell homes.
Sure.
So in fact, if we're not aware and sensitive to that idea, they may perceive us as a threat. Because guess what? I also sell homes. So we have
Yeah.
to hit that threat head on and be aware of it and address it. So that's one thing. Number two, if a realtor is potentially going to lose trust with a future transaction, a future person that might list or buy through them in the future, they're not going to take that risk, right? So they want to be helpful and be a helpful resource to people, only to the degree that it doesn't turn around and bite them in the back. So it's really important to convey and to prove and to have demonstrate that if you refer me out, I guarantee you people will be thanking you, because most realtors know that most property managers and the relationship with the landlords, not super great service experience. Usually there's missed expectations, there's miscommunication, there's people that probably shouldn't be landlords. They get frustrated with the experience overall, not just, and so then they don't want that to reflect negatively on them, the realtor who referred you as the property manager. So those are two things that are really important to address and resolve. Thirdly, I think they ultimately they just want the client to be taken care of. Sometimes, thirdly, they want to make a little bit of money. They want a little referral fee, but most of them just when I've talked to them, they just want to make sure the client's taken care of. So we
I
can dive
would,
into like how to address those. But yeah,
yeah,
am
I
I
would add to that, those three
yeah.
things. I would add that from the psychology standpoint, they're looking to be perceived as an expert and a connector.
Yes,
So it's the same thing if somebody's wanting to get their property fixed up to sell on the market next spring. I've got a great landscaper. Let me connect you with them.
right.
I've got a great painter, whatever. And so they become the connector, they become the authority in the space. And so if we can figure out how to position that realtor as the authority and they get authority points by referring us, then that's a bigger boost. You mentioned sometimes there's a little bit of financial incentive, but honestly, when you dig into it, that $200, $300, $500, whatever that referral fee is
Immaterial.
is irrelevant based on what they could eventually get by them referring a quality property manager who is committed to referring that sale back to them when it comes time to sell the
That's
property.
key. That's key. And I actually spent a little money with an attorney to draft a referral agreement with the agents, where it's spelled out and we sign it. And I say, here's my commitment to refer this person back to you. And if we could level up and go a little broader scope on this for a moment, the profitability of the lifetime value of the client is so important to understand. Maybe we can do a separate discussion on this sometime. But I once did uh, I'm not trying to sound smarter than I am, but I once did a discounted cash flow analysis, a net present value of the cash flow stream of each property management client, each landlord account. And I found that at that time, when I did this analysis, we had a 30% likelihood of listing and selling that home at the end of our property management engagement, which is pretty high. I think we're off of that now. But at that time, the average fee we would get for listing that home was $8,000. And it usually happened 3 to 6 years in the future. Okay. So when you discount cash flows, you're bringing them back to the current so that you could say, hey, if I could buy this account today, what would it be worth? What cash would I pay for this account so that that capital would return me according to my investment requirements, and it would be a net benefit to me. Kind of how much money would I put on this side of the machine to get this money out eventually over time, and then you can get a net present value. What I found, the single biggest driver, I'm going to connect this back to realtor referrals. The single biggest driver by far in the net present value of each property management account was whether we listed and sold that property. And further, the closer to today that we list and sell that property, the higher the net present value of that account became. And so I was dismayed when I did this analysis, because I thought, dang it, I wanted to start a business that was getting away from transactional revenue, and now I see that my primary reason I have a property management company is so that hopefully I can transact. And the sooner to today that I transact, the better off I am. Okay,
Sure.
what does this have to do with realtor referrals? Uh, Realtors want that referral back. They want to transact. It is vital to them, if they're going to refer that trusting relationship to you, that they're going to have the opportunity to list and sell that property back. So then you think, well, then why, if I think there's a 0% chance I'm going to transact on this property, and I put that into the calculus, and I compare like what kind of leads do I want to go after, realtor referral leads fall in the hierarchy of like what's the most valuable lead type, right? However, there's another book that I read that was really impactful in my thinking, The Cumulative Effect. And the idea is that even if we get lower quality accounts that we have to refer back to for transactions, and there's more to talk about there. Most realtors aren't even in the business 5 years in the future, so you end up transacting some of those anyway, right?
I want to come back to that because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not
let's
a
come back
lost
to that.
point. We're going to dig
But
into
but
that.
even if it was the case that you would get none of those transactions, the compounding, the cumulative effect of having more bodies in your business that you're building goodwill with, you're serving well, and they're talking about you and writing positive reviews and connecting you with their friends and family that are not beholden to this realtor relationship, is enough to make it a primary lead gen source, in my opinion.
Okay. And I agree with all of that. But there's a nugget you kind of polished over at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that is, so is your realtor referral agreement that you had drafted with your attorney, are you having an agreement to refer it back to the brokerage or to the individual broker that referred it to you? And
Individual agents.
I know technically all business is done in the name of the brokerage, but your referral agreement can either be that I'm going to refer it back to the brokerage or I'm going to refer it back to the individual broker. So
Yeah,
which
that's
is
a
it?
good point, Tony. I think our intent is to refer back to the agent, because that's, kind of, we look at that as And maybe legally that's not appropriate. Maybe the relationship really does live with the broker. I hadn't thought through that. But no, our intent of the agreement is to refer back to the agent.
Well, and I don't think because it's a referral agreement that you're not getting compensated at that time. It's not a referral. I've referred you a person to sell them a property. So I
It,
deserve to get 25% of your commission. That's not the same type of a referral agreement that we're talking about. So in that, I agree that has to go through the brokerage. In this, I believe you can have an agreement that you give me a client and I will give that client back to you. I will inform that client to use you. I can't force them to, but I will refer them back to you down the road and I will refer that back to the agent. So I think legally, asterisk, not
check
an
with your
attorney, all that
attorney.
junk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
check with your attorney.
But but I think that's true is that we'll refer it back to the agent. So here's the little candy in there. You mentioned that most agents aren't in the business 5 years down the road. Now we hope that our referral partners, we hope the best for them. We hope that in 5 years or 3 years or 10, we can refer that property back to them and they can sell it.
Right.
But like you said, a portion of those, whether it's 80%, 20%, 5%, somewhere in the middle, doesn't matter. A portion of those are no longer going to be in a position where they can accept a commission for selling the property. And so
Right.
if they're out of the business, your referral agreement no longer applies because you can't refer it back to them to sell because they're not a licensed agent, which means you are now casting a wide net. And if they're in business, we give it back to them. We honor our commitments. We're happy to do it. We celebrate it. But if they're not in business, that changes that lifetime value because now there's no agent to refer it back to and you can close that for your own business.
Absolutely. And you might even assign a probability to that of like 50%. And I bet that's not too far off. It might be even higher than 50% they're not in business anymore. And so you can factor that in. Also in the agreement, we also put in there that if we reach out to you and you don't, if we fail to reach out to you, we switch systems, we forget that you refer, we're going to put it in our system that this came from you. And we expect you to stay in touch with this client over the years also.
Yeah.
But in the event that we fail to refer back to you and we end up transacting and you become aware of that within, statute, we have some limitation on it, but we will pay you 25% of that commission that we earned anyway. And so we put that in writing as well. And maybe that is technically, legally, that should be with the broker if we're committing to that. But yeah, check with your attorney on that. That's the intention.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, so I like this road that we're on of instead of trying to look for cold leads, let's search for warm leads. You had mentioned if I could be on a Zoom in front of 100 people for $200, it's worth it. And I don't disagree with that. But if you had the option of contacting 500 agents one time or 100 agents 5 times, which road would you pick and why?
Are the agents wannabes or are they actually doing deals?
It's a good point. I think for me, you hear a lot about picking your dream 100, finding the top 100 people that you'd love to be in business with. So for me, I'm going to answer the question and then see if you agree. I would prefer to figure out a system and we can talk about how to do that, but find the dream 100 in your marketplace and target those people and build relationships with them and figure out how can I maximize the value I bring to the relationship. And eventually the law of reciprocation, they will eventually feel the guilt. And if I'm getting all this value, I have to try to figure out how to give something back. And so I'm going to now reach out and refer you. So I would prefer to go down that route. But if you pick the wrong 100, it might be better to do the 500 approach. So what's your opinion?
I'm resonating with this idea. And also, when you said reciprocation, it triggered my memory of the author Robert Cialdini, wrote the book called Influence. Fantastic. I think it's a must read for anybody in sales and marketing. And absolutely, he told it just real quick anecdote on this. He told this story about a teenage kid coming to his door selling magazine subscriptions. He said no, and then the teenage kid said, okay, well, if you don't want to do magazine subscriptions, maybe you'll buy this thing that I have. And he's no, 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 no. And he's like, okay, okay. Would you at least buy this bar of chocolate for $5 to help my cause? Robert Cialdini hates chocolate. He noticed handing over $5 for a bar of chocolate he didn't want, and it was because that even a concession triggers the feeling of reciprocity. So anyway, just bank that for future reference. But yeah, fantastic book, Robert Cialdini, Influence, and Reciprocity is true. And now I forgot what you asked me.
That's good. All right. So I'll say it
Oh,
again.
the
So
top 100.
top 100 5 times versus 500 people once.
Okay, I think 100% I would go all in with the top 100 5 times, and a practical tool that obviously you have access to the MLS. So build your list, do it. Look at the highest volume agents, do it.
Yeah.
Also, there's a magazine in my market, might exist in your market too, called Real Producers. So in Phoenix, it's called East Valley Real Producers. That magazine is like a franchise model. So you may have a Real Producers magazine in your market, and it's every single month it shows the top producers in your area by rank. And these high producers, frankly, they are it is a Tony, you talk about having the Rolodex of referral partners. They have that ironclad. Like they know who their number, they know who their title company is, they know who their A, B, and C lender is, they know who their A, B, and C general contractor, they know who their staging companies are, they know who their design companies are, their photographers. They have these lists and they have these very strong relationships because it's part of the empire that they built. It's
Mm-hmm.
no, it's no mistake that they've become a top producer, and they either have completely written off the category of property manager, or they have somebody in that category. And sometimes it's best to approach them and say, hey, who is your preferred referral partner for property management? And can I get in your backup or backup to backup position? And that sometimes is the way in because they're very deliberate about it.
Sure. Yep. Okay. I know we're getting to the point where we need to wrap up, but I want to go down this path of 100 people 5 times. So if that's the approach we're going to take, if I call you up and say, hey, Mark, just checking in with you this month. Do you have anybody that you could refer for property management? And I do that 5 times, 5 months in a row. I may actually get a lead out of that. Maybe I may. What's a better approach for
Yeah,
me
I
to
was
be
gonna
able to
say,
contact
I
you
was gonna
five
say
times?
that sounds annoying.
Yeah,
Please don't
right.
ever, if you're trying to get something from me and you just come to me over and over, harassing me with your hand out, please don't do that.
Yeah,
You
right.
know what I
That's
mean?
why I
Like,
say you may get somebody
yeah.
on just the right day, but the odds aren't great. So I'm contacting you 5 times. What could I do to offer value? If you're the real estate agent, I'm the property manager. How do I build those relationships over 5 times, 12 times,
Yep.
whatever?
Here's an idea. Take stock of what your unique gifts are. What capabilities, what strengths do you have in business in general? What's something that you can give of value? Alex Hermosi, he said he spent like 25 grand at one point joining a mastermind group. And at the first meeting, some of the people that were in this introductory class that he was part of, I might be mixing my drinks a little bit. I think this could have been the guy that co-wrote the book with Dan Sullivan, Who Not How. Anyway, the
Darren
principal
Hardy.
means it went to this, and some of the people that paid 25,000 to be in this networking group thought, well, their mindset was, how am I going to make sure that I'm going to get a return on this investment? His primary focus was, what can I bring to the table and contribute to others? And I do remember this pertains to Alex Hormozy because he knew that he could write really effective sales scripts. He was really good at writing sales scripts. And so everybody in his group that he got put with, he said, hey, let me take a crack at your sales script, let me refresh it, whatever. And he blew them away. And then now he has a blank check in his back pocket for the next time he needs a favor. Now, you're not going to write the all-star realtors sales script for them, but what is it you bring to the table? And what is it you bring to the table specifically around investors and buying more properties, something that will generate more business for this realtor? Is there some value add education? Is there some market analysis? Can you offer to do free rental comps for any transactions they're working on? Is there some kind of an insight or a strategy or a tip? Or can you give them an insight because you are boots on the ground in the rental market? Can you give them a monthly tickler email about, hey, here's our days on market, here's what we're seeing on the rental side? Make them more of an expert in general about the real estate market. How do you contribute knowledge or tools to them that makes their lives better?
I would add one other piece of that. I'm sure there's other things. That's excellent feedback. But another thing is, again, going back to the psychology of building this relationship, you want to provide value and you want to recognize them for their achievements. So another thing, you don't have to, if you were going to pick up the phone, you could go down the list of closings in the MLS for that month, and just once a month or once a week, pick up the phone and say, hey, I saw you sold the house at such and such. Just wanted to congratulate you on that. I know you worked hard. It's probably going to go to voicemail, right? So you're not going to have this long conversation with it. It's just, hey, I see this, I recognize it, I appreciate the hustle, great job. Let me know if there's anything I could ever do for you. I love being a part of a strong team.
Yeah. You just tapped into a couple other principles that Robert Cialdini talks about in that book called Influence. When it's specific and personalized, right? That gets people's attention. That increases influence. He talked about how he showed up at a high-end hotel one time. Everything was in order. Check-in process was really smooth. Went over to the desk in the room, noticed there was, stationery and a pen next to it. And he thought, well, that's a nice touch. Looked a little closer. His name was on the stationery, and it blew him away. So what can we do that personalizes and makes our connection with that person really specific? You see this happen with LinkedIn and cold emails you get sometimes, like, hey, I noticed you were a fellow ASU Sun Devil, go Sun Devils, like people are looking for that specific personalized connection. And I think, of course, high impact realtors have a bit of an ego and they're very driven, very competitive. So if you can acknowledge their accomplishments, I'm sure that helps stroke the ego and helps as well.
Well, I know we could go on, you and I could go on chat.
And we should do
for a
part
long
2.
time. Let's save this. Yeah, we'll save the rest of how to really dig in and how to put one of these programs together. We'll save that for another time. But Mark's always great spending time with you, chatting. I noticed you dressed up again. I tried to do a little better this time than last time. It's at least got a collar on it now. So
Hey,
I'm
what?
working my way up to the Mark Brower standards here.
I'm going to leverage that into a flex. I didn't even know we were doing this today. So I'm just trying. I just woke up and I wanted to bring my A game to the office today. So
yeah, well, I'm trying to be authentic and be who I am on camera, off camera, on stage, off stage. And, I'm the sports running guy, which you are too. So I'm surprised to see
your
you in the
running
jacket.
shoes in frame. I want to see your running shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. You have the running shoes on.
I got them on. I got my Hoka Challengers on.
Nice.
All right, buddy.
Good stuff. All right.
I think that's a wrap.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.